Heya! Welcome back to the Den of Alacrity. Today we're doing episode 2 of Make with Mac. In episode 1 I showed you how to make bread the super easy way, and in this instalment I'm inviting you along on the next stage of my 3D printing journey. I'm going to show you how my 3D printer works and tell you some stories and lessons that I've learned along the way. It's going to be loads of fun and I hope you learn something too. By the end of this video I hope you will be inspired to have a go at 3D printing yourself, or maybe just put some love into a 3D printer you've already got. I'm actually going to be upgrading this old acrylic frame on my 3D printer to a new metal one that I got from RatRig. All the parts you'll see in today's video will come from RatRig, so I'll leave a link to their site in the description down below in case you want to do something similar with your 3D printer. I'm really excited for this one. I'm going to have loads of fun and hopefully you will too, so let's get into it. First stage in getting this frame upgraded is actually to take this old one apart. I'm not going to lie to you guys, the only way I got this one up was with some help from my friend, so the idea of taking it all apart and building it back up again is kind of nerve-wracking. The first thing I want to talk about is just how mesmerising it is watching my 3D printer in action. When I watch my printer I feel like a child watching tumbling clothes through the window of a washing machine. It's absolutely enchanting. The process doesn't change that much layer to layer. First it does the outside walls and then the inner support structure, over and over. I could watch my printer for hours, but if I'm honest, I often tear myself away. If I watch it in real time, one, it could take a long time, and two, I miss out on the other benefit of precision. And that's that once it's off and going, and you've made sure that the bottom layers have gone down, you don't need to watch it that much, you can do other stuff in the meantime. Right, I did it. I'm out of the airplane and in free fall. There's no going back now. I need to organise these parts and then we can have a look at all of them. If I was to ask you to name the parts inside of a 3D printer, what would you say? If you're anything like me when I started, you'd probably say something like motors and a bit of magic? Truth is that 3D printers are made up of extremely simple parts, just put together in a clever way. So, that was half true past me. A few stepper motors, they differ from normal motors in that you can tell them to move a precise amount, and some of them, including these ones, remember how far they've moved. So we can translate that movement on a stepper motor to a distance travelled for the print head or the print bed. Some timing belts, they're just rubber belts. These ones are reinforced with carbon fibre running through the middle, but they've got little rubber teeth on them. And then those rubber teeth attach to the stepper motors, and as the stepper motor moves, it pulls the print bed or the head a certain amount along the X or the Y axis. A hotbed, this is essentially a small circuit board on a large aluminum plate that conducts heat very well. It's also got a thermometer right in the centre here. You can really easily tell where mine is because I broke it and I had to solder a wire across the top here. A power supply, one is 12 volts and 20 amps. There's a small motherboard to coordinate the whole thing. I won't go into exactly what all the little components on here are, but mostly they're connectors for all of the different components I've just showed you. We have the hot end, and this is really the mastermind behind the whole thing. This is another one of those stepper motors, but this one is attached to a circular geared system that pulls the filament down through this hole at the top here and through this heated end. And you can see the connectors here that go from another temperature sensor inside of this aluminum block all the way back to be plugged into the motherboard. And finally, a display. This one's a very simple LCD screen with 4 buttons attached, so I can actually interact with the software that's installed on the motherboard. The software installed is pretty simple as well. When you consider a whole print, it can seem really complex, but when you break it down and have a look at the individual steps, each of them is a very simple command. Heat the bed up to a certain temperature, move the print head so far in the X direction, move the bed so far in the Y direction. It's all about keeping those temperatures constant and not overheating, which is obviously a really big problem. We don't want fires to start. Right, now it's time to build my new frame. I've got all the components out of my RatRig boxes. These aluminum extrusions, which have like a T-slot in them, so that's what I'm going to use to create the new body of my frame, which will be much more rigid than the acrylic I had before. There's also 3D printed parts to hold all the other components. I've got some of the bigger ones here, and there's also a full sort of bag here as well of like littler components, but we'll leave those for a minute. In my first video on 3D printing, I introduced you to a tool called Thingiverse. The next lesson I've learned is all around the ethos that led to Thingiverse. We teach kids to share throughout the whole of school, and then by the time we become adults, it seems to me as if some sort of selfishness has taken over, and all of a sudden we just want to keep everything to ourselves. Not makers though, they're breaking the mold. Take my new frame for instance. So this entire design was created by a user called Finini. Now I hope I've got that right, I probably have not, but that is my best shot. Finini designed this, put the parts up online, even created a really nice parts list that you can buy, and then obviously Ratrig has taken that and now they sell me the parts, so that's where I got this from. You can get these aluminum extrusions from any metal worker essentially, but I wanted to get it all from Ratrig because I wanted them to print the 3D parts as well. My frame was so wobbly I didn't really trust myself to do this many really crucially structurally important 3D printed parts. So it was really great I could get those from Ratrig as well. This ethos I'm talking about came from the open source community, which has had a huge part to play in the popularization of 3D printing. Open source started as a way to design software, where the source code is open for all to see, and the end software can be modified and shared freely. It has since bled through into other disciplines, and the ethos behind it is what I think led to Thingiverse. It's time for me to build this new frame. Thanks again to Finini and Ratrig, you're awesome. So, it got a bit late last night and I was starting to get annoyed at all the fiddly bits, so I decided to just put it down, rest for the evening, and then come back to it another day. So I've just finished work and I'm going to crack on and get this frame built. Now it's time to install the 3D printer parts back onto this new frame, which is looking quite snazzy if you ask me. Now I always knew that I'd find uses for a 3D printer once I had one so readily available, but I must admit that I'm just constantly surprised at how many uses there are for a 3D printed part around the house. From clothes pegs, to bag clips, to improvements for my controllers when I play video games. So I suppose the lesson here is, there are 99 problems that my printer can solve. I wrote that joke ages ago and every time I read it or say it, it gets less funny. Hopefully it's the first time for you. It's a new day again. I ran out of time last night, but tonight I'm going to get all these last components back on there. I'm going to try and get a test print done. Now, every time I load up my Octoprint server, which is on a Raspberry Pi and it controls the printer, I get this warning that comes up that says, careful, your firmware can catch fire. Now, I don't know about you guys, but any amount of risk to catch fire is too much risk for me. So I thought while I was doing this whole upgrade, I would also upgrade the firmware. This leads me on to the last lesson I wanted to share about 3D printing, and that is that I am the Jon Snow of 3D printing, and I know nothing. But that's okay. The first step in becoming a master of something is admitting that you have things to learn. Now, every new project or print that I attempt with my printer brings with it lessons. And that's how the pros did it too, right? Step by step, little by little. You make some mistakes, you learn some lessons, you think you've broken the 3D printer a few times and then you fix it, or you upgrade it to a cool new frame and you think, wow, I'm gonna print so many things on this. Right, that's all done, I've uploaded it. Let's fire her up and see what she can do. I did it! Another successful 3D printer upgrade. Thank you so much for joining me on this next stage of my 3D printing journey. I hope you enjoyed watching me upgrade my printer and hearing about some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. This isn't the last video in the 3D printing series, there's one more to come. Hopefully by now I've convinced you that 3D printing is a not only accessible hobby, but an extremely rewarding one too. And in the next video, I'm going to showcase some of the things you can do with a 3D printer by doing 5 useful prints in 5 days. If you want to follow along whilst I'm doing the prints, I'm going to put it up on Instagram as live videos and stories, so make sure you follow us over there to get updates. If you have any thoughts about the lessons I've shared today, or if you just want to chat to me about 3D printing or any other hobby that you really enjoy, hit me up on Twitter. Linkies to all of these are going to be in the description down below. I've also written an article that goes alongside this video, so if you want to read a bit more in depth about the lessons that I've learned, head over to the denofalacrity.co.uk, that link is in the description down below. Thank you again, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. But until then, my beautiful cauldron of internet bats, happy learning.